Captain Aria Hale stood on the observation deck, her eyes scanning the stars through the reinforced glass. The vast expanse of space was eerily calm, yet something felt off. The galaxy had been quiet for years, too quiet. The Jar Dominion had withdrawn into the shadows, and Earth had used the peace to rebuild after the devastating war that had nearly destroyed them. But Aria had always been a realist. She knew better than to trust the silence. There was always something lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. Her thoughts were interrupted by the harsh buzz of an incoming transmission. Aria tapped the console, and a holographic figure flickered to life. Admiral Jonas Cade, her superior officer and mentor. His face was stern, a slight furrow on his brow as he looked directly at her. "Captain Hale, we've got a situation," Cade said, his voice grim. "A Veyari ship just entered Earth's orbit." The words hit Aria like a physical blow. The Veyari, an ancient and mysterious alien race that no one had encountered in centuries, had always been a legend, a myth. No one knew where they came from or what they truly wanted, but the stories of their vast fleets and advanced weaponry had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. If they were real, it meant that everything Earth had worked for, all the fragile alliances and hard-won peace, was about to crumble. "I'll be right there," Aria responded, her heart racing as she turned toward the elevator. As she walked through the corridors of the command ship, her mind raced. The Veyari were known for their inscrutable motives and near unbeatable military prowess. Why would they come to Earth? Were they here for resources, for domination, or something far worse? When Aria arrived at the command bridge, the tension was palpable. Officers moved swiftly, scanning the monitors and communicating with ground forces. The massive Veyari ship, a sleek black monolith, hung in the sky like a dark omen. No weapons were active, but its presence alone was enough to send a chill through the room. "Admiral, what's the status?" Aria asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Cade's eyes locked onto hers. "They've sent a message. A delegation is requesting to land. They want to meet with Earth's leadership." Aria frowned. A peaceful delegation from a race as enigmatic as the Veyari? It didn't add up. She knew the risks of trusting alien emissaries, especially those who had been silent for so long. The last thing Earth needed was another war, especially not after everything they had been through. "Do we have any intel on their intentions?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Nothing reliable. All we know is that they claim to be peaceful, but their ships are armed to the teeth, and their technology is unlike anything we've encountered," Cade replied, his voice tinged with unease. "Great," Aria muttered, glancing at the holographic displays. The Veyari ship's shields were already adjusting to Earth's gravitational field, a subtle but clear sign of their preparedness for something. "So, we just let them land? No questions asked." "We need to tread carefully," Cade said. "The government wants to avoid provoking them, but I need you to be ready. If this turns into a trap, I want Earth's best on the front lines." Aria clenched her fists, her instincts already alert, her mind calculating every possible outcome. "Understood, Admiral. I'll prepare the fleet." As the transmission ended, Aria stood there for a moment, her gaze still fixed on the Veyari ship. A part of her, the part that had seen too much war and loss, wanted to turn away, to believe that this time, humanity could avoid the destruction that seemed so inevitable. But another part of her, the part that had seen firsthand the kind of devastation the universe could bring, knew better. The Veyari weren't here for peace. They were here for something else, something far darker. Aria was ready. The tension on the command bridge was unbearable as Earth's fleet prepared for the Veyari delegation's landing. Aria stood at the front, her eyes scanning the myriad of tactical readouts before her. The sleek black Veyari ship was still hovering in low orbit, its size dwarfing the surrounding ships in Earth's defense fleet. Despite its peaceful intentions on the surface, Aria couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. "Captain, all systems are online." "Ready for your orders," reported Lieutenant Keller, a young officer who had only recently been assigned to Aria's team. She nodded curtly, but her mind was elsewhere, coming through every possible scenario. The Veyari had requested to land, but it was clear that their motives were far from transparent. Aria knew that the Veyari were far too ancient and technologically advanced to be making friendly gestures without some hidden agenda. Earth had only just begun to stabilize from the last war. Was humanity ready for another conflict? Was this their chance for peace, or their final opportunity for survival? Aria's internal debate was interrupted when Admiral Cade's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Captain, we've intercepted a coded transmission. It's coming from within our own government." Her stomach dropped. A transmission from Earth's government should have been routine, but Cade's tone told her it was anything but. "Play it," she ordered. The message was from the President's office, a direct communique to Earth's senior military command. As the holographic projection flickered to life, the face of President Eleanor Voss appeared on the screen, her expression taut and grave. "Captain Hale," the President began, "we have reason to believe that the Veyari may have infiltrated our highest ranks. There are whispers of a deep cover agent within our own government, possibly embedded for years. The delegation they've sent may be a cover for something far more dangerous." The words hit Aria like a slap to the face. Deep cover agents. It wasn't just a diplomatic issue, it was a full-blown internal crisis. How far had the Veyari infiltrated? Who could she trust? "I'm sending you a list of names," President Voss continued. "Be careful. The Veyari are masters of deception. We cannot afford to make a mistake now. If you uncover anything suspicious, report back immediately." Aria's hand tightened into a fist. How many allies had already been compromised? She couldn't shake the thought that the very people she'd worked with for years might be working against her. With the fleet poised to meet the Veyari delegation, time was running out. "Understood, ma'am," Aria replied, her voice steady but her mind racing. "Good luck, Captain. We're counting on you." The transmission ended, and for a long moment, Aria just stared at the empty screen. Keller approached her cautiously. "Captain, we're getting close to the landing site. What do you want us to do?" Aria's mind was spinning. She thought back to every meeting, every conversation she'd had with Earth's top brass over the years. Who among them could be compromised? Was someone working with the Veyari from the inside? "We move forward as planned. We'll meet the delegation, but stay alert. I want eyes on every person in that delegation. No one leaves without being thoroughly vetted. If there's an agent in our ranks, we need to know who they are." Keller nodded, though she didn't seem entirely convinced. The tension in her posture was palpable. "Are we sure we can trust anyone at this point?" Aria met her gaze, her eyes hardening. "We have to. If we don't, we're already lost." The landing site was a military complex just outside of Earth's capital. As the Veyari shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Aria's team prepared to greet them. Aria watched as the sleek ship touched down with unnatural grace, its surface gleaming under the sun. It was as if it were alive, humming with some unseen power. The Veyari delegation emerged. They were tall, with angular faces and iridescent skin that shimmered in the light. Their eyes were almost too large, black, and unreadable. Their leader, a figure clad in dark robes and adorned with strange symbols, stepped forward. "I am Salur," the leader said in a voice that reverberated with an almost hypnotic cadence. "We come not as conquerors, but as partners. We offer you a path of ascension if you are willing to accept it." Aria's instincts screamed at her to be cautious, but she forced herself to mask her distrust. This was the moment. This was where everything could go wrong. The question was, would humanity's fragile alliances crumble under the weight of deception, or would they rise to face an unseen enemy within? And then, as the Veyari leader's eyes locked with hers, Aria felt it, a strange, unsettling feeling. Something was very, very wrong. The tension was thick in the air as Arya stood across from the Veyari delegation, trying to maintain her composure despite the growing suspicion gnawing at her. Zeller, the leader of the Veyari, extended a hand toward her, a gesture that, in any other situation, would have been a sign of peace. But there was something about it, something unsettling in the way his long, slender fingers twitched as he held out his hand. Arya hesitated before accepting the handshake, feeling a sharp, cold pulse of energy run through her skin as their hands made contact. "Captain Hale," Zeller's voice echoed in her mind, deep and unnervingly calm. "I sense your distrust. It is understandable. But the time has come for your species to transcend your limitations. Together, we can usher in a new era of prosperity." Arya's mind raced. The Veyari leader was speaking directly into her thoughts. Was it some form of telepathy, or had they developed a technology that could influence her mind? She didn't know, but she wasn't about to let her guard down. "I'm not here to discuss your prosperity," Arya replied, her voice cool. "I'm here to ensure Earth's survival." Zaller's smile didn't reach his eyes. Ah, survival. How small a goal for a species with such potential. He turned to the rest of his delegation, who stood in perfect formation, their expressions unreadable. "You misunderstand, Captain. We offer you a gift, an alliance. The galaxy is vast, and the Veyari can offer you much. Your world can become more than just a survivor of wars. It can become the center of the universe." Arya's blood ran cold. She knew too well the price of alliances with powerful races. She'd seen entire civilizations reduced to pawns in a galactic game. Earth had fought for its freedom once, and it wasn't about to surrender it now. "We will not bow to any empire," Arya said firmly, "and we don't need your gifts." A brief flicker of surprise crossed Sailor's features before he quickly masked it. "So be it. But know this, Captain Hale, we offer you a path of ascension. If you refuse, you will leave us no choice but to take what we need by force. Your species will learn the price of defiance." Before Arya could respond, the doors behind her burst open, and an officer rushed in, breathless. "Captain, we've intercepted a transmission. There's a sleeper cell in our ranks. They've activated the coordinates for a classified weapon. It's in motion." Arya's heart skipped a beat. A weapon? Her mind immediately went to the worst possible scenario. The Veyari had been planning this from the start. They had not come for peace. They had come to conquer. "Alert the fleet," Arya barked. "Get every ship into defensive formation now. We've been compromised." As the officer rushed to carry out her orders, Arya's thoughts raced. She had known it was too easy. There was no way the Veyari would land on Earth, offering peace. And now, with the sleeper cell activation, it was clear. The Veyari's diplomatic mission was a diversion. "We'll show them that Earth doesn't kneel," Arya muttered under her breath. In the moments that followed, chaos erupted. The Veyari delegation remained eerily calm as Arya turned to the nearest communications officer. "Activate the emergency protocols. I want full lockdown on all key infrastructure. No one gets in or out without clearance. We're under attack." Zeller stood motionless, his eyes narrowing. "Your resistance is futile. The war has already begun." Arya ignored his words, her focus sharp. She was a leader, and she couldn't afford hesitation. The Veyari had set their plan in motion, but Earth wasn't as unprepared as they might have thought. Earth's forces, while not as technologically advanced as the Veyari, had something the invaders didn't: determination. The will to fight for freedom, even if it meant the ultimate cost. "Captain," Lieutenant Keller's voice crackled over the comms. "We've identified the weapon. An energy cannon in the Nevada desert. It's charging up. Lock onto its coordinates. I want a team on the ground within the hour," Arya ordered, already preparing for the worst. They couldn't afford to let the Veyari complete their strike. "No matter what, we stop them here. Now." As she moved toward the command center, Arya felt a sharp pang of doubt. Was it too late? Had they already lost to the Veyari's web of deception? But then she remembered the faces of the men and women who had stood beside her in every battle, those who had fought to protect Earth's fragile peace. They would stand with her again. And as Arya looked back at Seller, who seemed oddly satisfied with the turn of events, she knew one thing for certain: Earth would not go quietly into the night. The flames of rebellion had been kindled, and they would burn brighter than ever. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly before Arya, the scorching sun beating down on her as her boots sank slightly into the dry, cracked earth. Her mind was focused, sharp, every detail of the mission burned into her memory. The Veyari's energy cannon, a weapon capable of decimating entire cities in seconds, had to be stopped. The fate of Earth rested on their success. "We're about 5 minutes out, Captain." Lieutenant Keller's voice crackled in Arya's earpiece, the sound of engines roaring in the background. Arya's team, an elite strike force, moved swiftly toward the target, their armored suits blending seamlessly with the terrain. "Stay sharp," Arya replied, her eyes scanning the horizon. "The Veyari don't leave anything to chance. We can't underestimate them." Behind her, the team moved with military precision, their movements synchronized as they advanced toward the hidden facility that housed the cannon. The site was located deep in the desert, a barren landscape perfect for hiding such a powerful weapon. It had been shielded from Earth satellites by an advanced cloaking technology, but Arya's fleet had managed to pinpoint its location after the sleeper cell's activation. As they neared the facility, Arya held up a hand to signal a stop. The ground trembled slightly underfoot, and the faint hum of power resonated through the air. The cannon was active, just moments from firing. They had no time to waste. "Deploy the drones," Arya commanded, and several small silent machines shot into the air, scouting the area for any Veyari defenses. The drones returned almost immediately with a clear scan of the facility. There were no visible guards, but a strong energy signature emanated from within. The cannon was ready to fire. "Damn it," Arya muttered under her breath. She had expected resistance, but the Veyari's confidence or arrogance was startling. "We need to move now." The team sprinted forward, using the cover of rocky outcroppings and the sparse desert brush. The facility came into view, a massive cylindrical structure reinforced with heavy plating. Arya's pulse quickened. This was it. The weapon that could erase Earth in a single shot was just behind those walls. "We have company," came Keller's voice, tight with urgency. Arya turned sharply, her gaze narrowing. 2 Veyari combatants emerged from behind the facility, their sleek, black armor shimmering in the harsh sunlight. They were fast, their movements almost predatory as they assessed the situation. "Take them down," Arya ordered, drawing her sidearm and taking aim. The team responded in perfect unison, opening fire with their energy rifles. The Veyari combatants moved with unnatural speed, their bodies contorting in ways that defied human agility, but they couldn't avoid the barrage. Sparks flew as energy blasts collided with their armor, and within seconds, the 2 Veyari soldiers fell, their bodies crumpling to the ground. "Clean hit," Keller reported, her voice relieved but tense. "We've got more coming. Lots of them." The first wave had been quick, but Arya knew the Veyari would be calling reinforcements. It was only a matter of time before the entire desert would be crawling with enemies. But they couldn't stop. The cannon was their priority. "Move in," Arya ordered, her voice cold and decisive. "We have to disable the cannon before reinforcements arrive." The team rushed forward, breaching the facility's outer perimeter. As they entered the reinforced doors, the air grew colder, the walls humming with the energy of the cannon. Arya's eyes were locked on the central control room, a glass and steel structure in the center of the facility, where the cannon's massive power core pulsated with a deep, glowing light. "Cover the exits," she commanded as they made their way to the control room. The team spread out, setting up defensive positions. The walls around them began to vibrate, and Arya could hear the low rumble of machinery, as if something massive was about to move. "Captain," came Keller's voice through her earpiece, "reinforcements are on their way. We're running out of time." Arya's pulse quickened. The cannon's countdown was nearing its final stages, and they had no more time to waste. They had to disable it and fast. She reached the console, her fingers flying across the controls as she bypassed security protocols and manually initiated the shutdown sequence. The facility's lights flickered, and the power core's hum grew louder as the countdown to the weapon's firing sequence intensified. "Arya," Keller's voice rang out with urgency. "Get out of there now." The ground beneath them rumbled violently, and the air was filled with a sudden surge of power. The cannon was still charging, but the power core had become unstable. If they didn't finish the shutdown, the explosion would take them all out. "I've almost got it," Arya snapped, her hands shaking with the pressure. She was so close, just a few more seconds. And then the facility shook violently. Alarms blared. The core was going critical. "Get to the exit, now," Arya shouted, her heart racing. The team retreated in haste, but as they ran, the floor below them cracked open. The cannon was about to fire, and the shockwave would destroy everything in its path. The countdown reached its final moments, and with a burst of willpower, Arya slammed her fist into the final override code. The lights flickered and the rumbling stopped, leaving only an eerie silence. They had succeeded. The cannon was offline, but the war had only just begun. The silence that followed the cannon's shutdown felt like a breath held too long, tense and suffocating. Arya stood at the exit of the facility, sweat beading on her forehead despite the desert's dry heat. The shockwave from the cannon's deactivation had reverberated through the air, but they were alive. The immediate threat had been neutralized, for now. "We're clear," Lieutenant Keller said, her voice shaky but relieved. The rest of the team filed out of the facility, their boots crunching on the desert floor as they moved quickly, scanning the horizon for any signs of the Veyari reinforcements they knew were coming. Arya nodded, taking one last look at the smoking ruins of the cannon facility. She felt a pang of unease deep in her gut, a gnawing sensation that something wasn't right. They had successfully stopped the weapon, but the Veyari's true intentions were still unclear. The strike force was barely a fraction of the force that could be mobilized against them. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. As they boarded the transport to return to the command ship, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The Veyari had been silent during their assault, offering no resistance beyond the few soldiers they'd encountered. It didn't make sense. Arya knew the Veyari were not the type to lose their control so easily. "What's the next move, Captain?" Keller asked, breaking Arya's thoughts. The young lieutenant was always at her side, a reliable presence, but even she couldn't hide the weariness in her eyes. They were all exhausted, physically and mentally drained after the assault. "We return to the ship," Arya replied. "Then we'll strategize. We've stopped their weapon, but they'll want revenge, and I don't think they'll stop at Earth." The transport's engines hummed as they took off, leaving the barren desert behind them. As they ascended, Arya looked out the window, her mind working furiously. The Veyari had offered an alliance, but their actions spoke volumes. Their motives were murky, and their weapons far too advanced for a simple show of diplomacy. The weapon they'd been working on in Nevada wasn't just a defensive measure, it was a symbol of their true intentions. They had come to Earth for something more than peace. The ship's sensors pinged, alerting them to an incoming communication. Arya raised an eyebrow, her instincts on high alert. It was a direct transmission, and the source was untraceable. She tapped a button, and the holographic display flickered to life. To her surprise, it wasn't Admiral Cade, nor was it the President. Instead, it was a face Arya had never seen before, a man in dark military garb, his face half hidden by a hood. "Captain Hale," the man's voice was low, almost a whisper, but carried an air of authority. "I've been watching you. I know what you've done, and I know what's coming next. The Veyari are only part of the equation. Aria's heart skipped a beat. Who are you? She demanded. What do you want? The man smiled, a smile that never quite reached his eyes. I represent a faction within your government. A faction that understands the true nature of the Veyari. You stopped their cannon, yes, but you've only scratched the surface. They've been infiltrating your ranks for years, Captain. And it's not just Earth they have their sights on. The words sent a cold shiver down Aria's spine. What are you saying? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They've been manipulating key figures within your military and government, orchestrating events from the shadows. They've planted agents, and soon they'll move to take control. You'll see it soon enough. People you trust, people you fought alongside, will turn against you. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Aria stunned. Her breath caught in her throat. The Veyari were already on Earth, yes, but if this mysterious figure was to be believed, they had far more influence than she had ever realized. Captain? Keller's voice was full of concern as she turned to look at Aria. What's going on? Who was that? Aria remained silent for a moment, her mind racing. A faction within their own government? Could the Veyari really have infiltrated so deeply? The implications were staggering. If Earth's leaders had been compromised, if allies she had trusted were now enemies, then everything she had fought for, everything humanity had struggled to achieve, could be torn apart in an instant. I don't know, Aria said finally, her voice hardening. But we need to find out. Now. The transport ship's engines hummed as it entered the atmosphere, but for Aria, the weight of the situation felt heavier than the ship itself. There was no more time for hesitation. The clock was ticking, and Earth was on the edge of a precipice. The Veyari were already here, but the true enemy might be much closer than she had ever feared. They were being betrayed from within, and Aria knew that they had to act fast before the flames of rebellion were snuffed out for good. The command ship's halls were filled with the hum of activity as Aria and her team returned. Tension hung in the air like an invisible storm cloud, each member of the crew acutely aware that something had shifted. Aria's mind was still reeling from the conversation with the mysterious figure. The Veyari had not just come to Earth to conquer. They had burrowed deep within the very systems meant to protect it. If what the stranger had said was true, the fabric of Earth's defenses had been corrupted from the inside. The fight was no longer just against the Veyari, it was a war on two fronts. Captain, Keller said, breaking her thoughts. She stood at Aria's side as they entered the command center, the glowing holomap of Earth's global defenses flickering before them. What's the next step? We need to move fast. If there's a mole in the ranks, it's only a matter of time before we're compromised. Aria stood in front of the map, her fingers twitching with the urge to plan their next move. The data they gathered from the Veyari facility in Nevada had been invaluable, but it wasn't enough. If they were to stop this, they needed to root out the traitors, and quickly. Her heart was heavy with the realization that some of those traitors were people she had once called friends. We go after the mole, Aria said, her voice cold with determination. Whoever is pulling the strings inside Earth's government and military will be the key to the Veyari's next move. We'll track them down. Do we have any leads? Keller asked. Aria shook her head. Not yet, but we can start by analyzing communications. If the Veyari have infiltrated, there should be a trail of anomalies, shifts in behavior, strange patterns in transmissions. We'll sift through the encrypted data and see if anything stands out. Keller nodded. I'll coordinate with intelligence and get started on that. What about the fleet? Aria's eyes hardened as she looked back at the map. The fleet's resources were stretched thin, and Earth's military could only hold out for so long if the Veyari attacked in force. She needed to buy them time. Move the fleet to a defensive perimeter around Mars. We need to protect our outer colonies and make sure no Veyari ships slip through. Keep the most advanced ships on standby in case we need to mobilize quickly. If the Veyari are playing the long game, they'll move soon." Keller nodded and left, her mind already working through the details of the plan. Arya stood for a moment longer, her fingers running over the edges of the map, tracing the outlines of Earth's territories, the outer colonies, the military installations. It felt like a game of chess, except the stakes were far higher than any game. If the mole was high enough in the chain of command, they could destroy everything from within. There were no safe places left. Arya was snapped out of her thoughts as the door to the command center slid open. A familiar figure stepped through, Admiral Cade. His sharp eyes locked onto hers immediately, and for a brief moment, Arya felt a flicker of something like hope. Cade had been with Earth's military for decades, a loyal and trusted figure. If anyone could help them root out the Veyari agents within, it was him. "Captain," Cade's deep voice filled the room. "We need to talk. There's something you need to see." Arya followed Cade through the corridors, her mind racing. What was so urgent? When they reached his office, Cade activated the holoscreen, and a series of encrypted files blinked into existence. "I've been going through our communications, just like you suggested," Cade said, his tone serious. "There's something here that doesn't add up. I found a transmission that looks wrong." Arya's heart skipped a beat. She stepped closer to the screen, eyes scanning the text. The transmission was brief, almost too brief, but there was something in the pattern of the encryption that sent a cold shiver down her spine. The transmission had been sent from a high-ranking officer within Earth's government, someone with access to classified military protocols. "This is it," Arya muttered under her breath. "The mole." Cade nodded. "I didn't want to believe it at first, but after cross-referencing it with other data, it's clear. This transmission was sent to a Veyari fleet within the past 48 hours. The officer is working with them." A wave of disbelief washed over Arya. She had suspected a traitor, but to know that someone so high up had already been compromised, it was a bitter pill to swallow. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Do we know who it is?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Cade hesitated before answering, his gaze unwavering. "Admiral Tanis. She's been one of the most vocal supporters of an alliance with the Veyari. She's also been pushing for military cooperation. I didn't see it before, but the signs were there. She's been feeding them information for months." Arya's fists clenched. Admiral Tanis was someone she had worked alongside, someone who had stood beside her in key battles. To think that she had been aiding the enemy all this time, it was a betrayal of the highest order. "Where is she now?" Arya demanded. Cade's face darkened. "She's on the command ship of the Pacific Fleet. We need to move quickly, Captain. If we don't act now, the Veyari will have access to our entire defense strategy." Arya's mind raced as the reality of the situation settled in. The mole wasn't just some low-level agent. It was an admiral, someone who could bring Earth to its knees with a single move. Earth's military might have just been turned against them. "We'll take her down," Arya said, her voice cold with resolve. "We'll expose the traitors and stop the Veyari, no matter the cost." Cade gave a firm nod. "I'll mobilize a strike team, but we need to be ready for anything." Arya stared out of the window, watching the stars flicker beyond the ship's hull. They were fighting not just for Earth's survival, but for its soul. And she was willing to burn it all to stop the darkness from consuming them. The Pacific Fleet loomed ahead, a formidable presence in the cold vacuum of space. Arya stood on the bridge of her command ship, her hands clasped behind her back as she surveyed the fleet's formation. The entire operation was on a razor's edge. Admiral Tanis, once a trusted ally, was on one of the most powerful ships in Earth's arsenal. Any move they made could spark an all-out war with their own people. "We're in position, Captain," Keller's voice rang out over the comms, breaking the heavy silence. Arya's eyes remained fixed on the holographic map in front of her. The coordinates for Tanis's flagship, the Vanguard, blinked steadily, The ship was stationed at the edge of the fleet's formation, a strategic position designed to give them control over Earth's defense systems. It was perfect for an ambush, perfect for a trap. "Begin the operation," Arya said firmly, her voice unwavering. "We hit fast, hit hard, and get out before anyone knows what happened." The team moved with military precision, slipping through the shadows of the fleet. They were only a few clicks away from the vanguard, and there was no room for mistakes. The silence was oppressive. Every member of Arya's team, decked out in their combat gear, knew the gravity of what they were about to do. Betrayal ran deep in their ranks now. This wasn't just about taking down Tanis, it was about sending a message to the entire military. No one was untouchable, no one was safe if they stood in the way of humanity's survival. As they approached the flagship, Arya received the signal from her stealth team on board the Vanguard. They had infiltrated the ship's lower levels, gathering intel and setting up for the takedown. Arya's heart beat faster, adrenaline pumping through her veins. If Tanis was as loyal to the Veyari as they suspected, there would be no room for negotiation. The time for questioning was over. "We're in," Keller reported. "Tanis is in the command center. We have visual confirmation. She's with a few of her officers, but no Veyari on board, at least not yet." Arya exhaled slowly, trying to calm her nerves. "Prepare the breach," she said. "Understood," Keller replied. The command ship's crew shifted into action, deploying stealth pods toward the Vanguard. The pods cut through the space around the flagship with ease, their hulls designed to blend into the ship's electromagnetic signature. Every movement was calculated, every step of the mission laid out with deadly precision. Arya's stomach tightened with anticipation. She had no idea how Tanis would respond. Would she fight to the death, or would she surrender and reveal the Veyari's plans? The countdown began. 30 seconds, Keller's voice echoed in her earpiece. "Be ready." Arya could feel the tension building. Her thoughts swirled, unable to settle. Tanis had always been a leader, charismatic and brilliant in her own right. To think she had betrayed everything they stood for was a crushing blow. Arya couldn't help but wonder, what had pushed her over the edge? Was it greed? Was it desperation? She shook her head, focusing. There was no time for doubt. "Deploy," she ordered. The pods shot out of their launch bays, piercing the hull of the Vanguard with silent precision. The breach teams disembarked, moving swiftly through the ship's dark corridors. Arya followed the signals on her wrist interface, leading her to the command center. As they neared their destination, Arya felt a sudden, inexplicable shift in the air. The faintest hum of energy, a vibration she couldn't quite place. Her instincts flared. "Hold up," Arya whispered, raising a fist to stop her team. She crouched low, listening. The hum was growing louder now, a familiar buzzing sound. It was the unmistakable tone of Veyari energy shields. "Damn it," Arya muttered under her breath. "It's a trap." She had known it was too easy. Tanis was no fool. She had expected them. But now the game had changed. A series of explosions rocked the corridor, sending debris flying. Arya's team immediately dove for cover, energy rifles drawn and raised. From the shadows, figures emerged, human soldiers, but their movements were controlled, robotic. They weren't acting like allies. Arya's heart sank as she realized the truth. "Veyari sleeper agents," Keller growled from behind her. "They were planted on board," Arya muttered. "Tanis's loyal officers, they've been compromised." The sound of footsteps echoed through the hall, growing louder. Arya's hand tightened around her rifle as the door to the command center slid open. Inside, Admiral Tanis stood, calm and collected, her back to the approaching strike force. She was flanked by several officers, all of whom were now revealed to be working in tandem with the Veyari. "Captain Hale." Tanis's voice rang out, icy and filled with a strange sense of satisfaction. "I've been expecting you." Arya's blood ran cold as she stepped forward, her rifle aimed at the traitor. "You've been playing both sides," she said through gritted teeth. Tanis turned, her expression unchanged, as if this moment were simply a part of her grand design. "I didn't betray anyone, Captain. I'm securing humanity's future, our future. The Veyari will bring order to this chaos, and you're too blinded by your loyalty to see it." Arya's heart clenched. This wasn't just betrayal. It was an ideological war. Tanis didn't see herself as a traitor, she saw herself as a savior. And now, she was willing to burn Earth to the ground to ensure the Veyari's victory. "We're done here," Arya said coldly. "You can either surrender, or we'll end this now." Tanis's lips curled into a smirk. "You'll never win this fight, Captain. The Veyari are already one step ahead." The tension in the room was unbearable. The fate of humanity now hung in the balance, and Arya knew that every decision from here on out would determine whether Earth survived or fell. The command center was a powder keg, and Tanis was the spark. Arya's grip tightened on her rifle, her eyes locked on the Admiral as she stood defiantly, surrounded by her compromised officers. Her words echoed in Arya's mind, but the truth was clear now. Tanis had become the enemy. The Veyari had corrupted her, and now they were trying to turn Earth into their own pawn in the galaxy's game. Arya took a step forward, her voice unwavering. "You're wrong, Tanis. Humanity won't bend to the Veyari. Not while we still have breath in our lungs." Tanis's expression flickered, just for a moment, as if the weight of Arya's words had struck a nerve, but then she recovered, her icy demeanor returning. "You think you can stop this? You're playing into their hands, Captain. They're already here, already embedded in every level of our government, our military. Earth doesn't stand a chance." The room buzzed with tension, the Veyari's energy shields humming like a low, ominous growl in the background. Arya knew Tanis had made her choice. She wasn't going to back down. The room felt smaller with each passing second. The enemy wasn't just Tanis and her officers anymore. It was the Veyari's entire presence, seeping into every corner of Earth's power. Keller's voice crackled over the comms, low but urgent. "Captain, we've got Veyari reinforcements incoming. The fleet's on high alert. They're mobilizing." Arya didn't flinch, but her heart skipped. The clock was ticking. "How long do we have?" she asked. 30 minutes, Keller replied. "No more than that." "Understood," Arya said, her voice steely. "Tanis, you've made your choice, and now I'll make mine." She gave a sharp nod to her team. In that moment, everything shifted. The first shot rang out, a sharp crack in the tense silence. Arya didn't hesitate. Her team, trained for this very moment, opened fire. The sound of weapons discharging filled the room, a chaotic blur of flashes and gunfire. Tanis's officers dove for cover, returning fire with unnerving precision. Arya moved with deadly grace, weaving through the chaos as she advanced on Tanis. The Admiral stood her ground, as if the room itself was her battlefield. A cruel smile danced across her lips. "You don't get it, do you, Captain?" she shouted over the fire. "You'll lose. Even if you take me down, it's already over. The Veyari have infiltrated too deeply. The war's already been lost." Arya's breath came in sharp bursts as she neared Tanis, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to end this now. With a fierce determination, she lunged, knocking aside a stray shot from one of Tanis's officers. In one fluid motion, Arya disarmed Tanis, pushing her into a corner. "You're wrong," Arya said, her voice deadly calm. "You've given them Earth, but you've underestimated us. Humanity is stronger than you think. We fight to the end." Tanis's eyes narrowed, her hands raised in a final attempt to fight back. "You think you can win," she hissed. "You're just a pawn in their game, just like me." Arya's hand tightened around Tanis's collar, pulling her face close. "I'm not a pawn. I'm a captain, and you're done." She threw Tanis to the ground, signaling to her team to secure the Admiral's officers. The last of Tanis's loyalists were quickly subdued, but Arya knew the fight was far from over. The reinforcements Keller had warned about were already closing in, and Tanis's defeat would only be the beginning. The Veyari were relentless. They would not allow Earth to slip from their grasp without a fight. "Captain." Keller's voice came through again, this time laced with urgency. "The Veyari fleet is warping into position. It's happening sooner than we thought. We need to act now." Arya's mind raced. There was no more time for hesitation. "Lock down this ship. Seal Tanis and her officers in the brig. We're going to the fleet." "We'll hold the bridge, Captain," Keller affirmed. "But we need you out here." Arya nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'm on my way." She turned to her team, now standing in the aftermath of the firefight. "Let's move. This fight is just getting started." The command center fell into chaos as the last of the Veyari infiltrators were contained. But Arya knew that even as Earth's defenses had been compromised, the spirit of humanity was still alive. They would fight, not because they were soldiers, but because they had no other choice. As Arya made her way to the hangar bay, she glanced back at the command center one last time. Tanis's betrayal stung deep, but it wouldn't break her. She had witnessed humanity's greatest strength in the most desperate of times. It was a force greater than any enemy, a force that could never be extinguished. The Veyari thought they had won, but they had underestimated the heart of humanity, and that would be their downfall. The final battle for Earth had just begun, and Arya Hale was going to make sure humanity's light would burn brighter than any force that threatened to extinguish it.